thanks to all the hardworking drivers across the U.S. from the Allen Lund Company.
Welcome to Trucking with OOIDA. I'm Scott Thompson.
And I'm Ashley Blackford.
Ashley, we have had some great interviews in recent days. One thing we haven't had a chance to do really in detail is to kind of go over some of the bigger news headlines that have been out. And there have been quite a few, actually, in recent days. Yeah. We're going to go into detail on those here in just a moment with Mark Schremmer and Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine, who, of course, have been covering these stories.
And while, all this hard trucking news is interesting, exciting, and we will talk about it in a minute, I have something that's way more exciting to talk about.
You have the floor.
National Dog Day.
National Dog Day.
And Tyson, I don't think I've ever actually... You've got an interesting dogs.
I do have a dog, yes. No, I'm a big dog.
You're not under line of questioning. You're not in court here.
Yeah.
Where's this going?
You're not under oath. It's okay.
I have a dog. I have an award-winning disc dog is what I have. Yes, I do disc dog competitions and stuff like that.
And that is, explain what that is.
Yeah.
So like Frisbee dog, so what we do is like we do tricks with competition. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's like you kind of see them in movies and shows all the time where just dogs doing tricks with Frisbees and disc and the long distance competition. So, yeah, we do local and sometimes national competitions, like competing against other dogs with throwing disc, doing tricks with disc. And then, it's a lot of fun. It's one of those things I never thought I would get into.
Yeah, how did you get into it?
The pandemic is what happened. So I got my dog as a puppy in October of 2019. And then the pandemic happens in March 2020. So I kind of stuck at home, messing with my dog. I have a Frisbee. So we go in the backyard. I just kind of casually toss it. And my dog just beelines it to the Frisbee and then like jumps it. This is a really cool twist. I was like, oh, that was neat. Bet you can't do that again. And I kept throwing it, and she kept doing it. It's like, I think we have a thing here.
Oh, wow.
And so I just Googled like disc dogs in Kansas City, and there's a whole group here in Kansas City. And 5 years later, like I'm really deep into it. It's what I do now outside of work. Wilhelmina is her full name.
Wilhelmina.
But we just call her Mina. Yes.
Mina.
Because I have to yell at her a lot. So
Wilhelmina
is a lot of, So
that's what she gets when she's in trouble.
Mina. Yes, that's right.
That's funny.
Schremmer, do you have a dog?
I do not have a dog.
Would you like to make up a story about a fake dog doing cool tricks?
I mean, I had a dog when I was a kid, but yeah.
No tricks, though?
No tricks, no awards.
No awards.
No, none whatsoever.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, I guess we'll move on then. Dogs and joking aside, I suppose, here, we do have quite a bit of news to cover. And again, we talked last week about, I think the big story last week, and I think will continue to be the big story as we see kind of the action unfold here, obviously is the action on non-domiciled CDLs. So we had OOIDA writing this letter to Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, essentially calling on the department to pause states' authority to issue these non-domiciled CDLs until they can kind of get a grasp on how big the problem is, what this looks like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then we had a letter to the governors also from the association. Mark, you've been covering this, and I don't want to steal too much of your thunder here, but this is something that has really been unfolding over a number of months here, and it feels like, and we said this to Todd, I think, Ashley, this feels like the first kind of step in forward. A long journey to wherever we may be heading.
Yeah, and and we're working on kind of a series of stories, on this topic at Landline right now, and really, this is an issue that's been huge under the spotlight in recent months, but it goes back years and years and years, and association has made comments on this. We found all the way back to 2008. This has been something that has really been talked about, whether we talk about English language proficiency issues or just not having enough barriers in the CDL process, just period. There needs to be better training standards for anybody who gets a CDL, and all of this going on. Obviously, right now, this crash in Florida on August 12th is what really has gotten everything going. But this is something that, like I said, association has been kind of sounding the alarm bells on for a while. But this is definitely brought it into more of a focus. And right now, the association is saying about all these safety loopholes that kind of exist, especially with this non-domiciled CDL process. If you try to get your CDL, they can go look back at 10 years at your driving record. For a U.S. citizen driver, they'll look back. Companies are supposed to look back 3 years off of this. On some of this process, we don't know for these drivers that are coming in as a non-domiciled CDL exactly how much scrutiny and that work history and all of that. And we see off this crash out of Florida, this driver's company, I mean, their out of service rate is more than double.
It was 13,
and I think the
right
national average is like 6%. So
Yeah.
they're more than double the national average. And so one of the things I really hope that can be done about this too is that we look at instead of just also focusing on these drivers, these companies that are hiring any driver that isn't up to the standards, whether it's not that they can speak English or in any way that they're not going to be safe behind the wheel. We really need to look at those and realize that a lot of these drivers are being taken advantage of as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of problems and issues here, and that's why OOIDA is basically asking DOT and the governors, let's put a pause on these non-domiciled CDLs and let's put safety first. And it's a nonpartisan issue. It's safety is what should be the focal point here.
The sad thing is this tragedy in Florida and 3 people were killed.
Yeah.
We don't need to get into the specifics because I know there's a lot of back and forth right now about this person, this truck driver who had apparently entered the U.S. illegally and was driving, and there's a whole bunch of ins and outs there. The point that I think we should make here, and Tyson, you are familiar with this with regard to truck parking, is that sometimes, sadly, it takes a tragedy like this one to bring an issue to light and bring about action. And it does feel like in this case, and we've seen this with truck parking too, I think in terms of raising awareness about trucks being parked on on-ramps and off-ramps and, fatal crashes, that maybe out of this, there will be some sort of common sense agreement that the way we're doing it right now, it just does not make any sense on a number of levels.
Sure. And I think that's true with just most any type of policy. It's not just trucking or transportation. I think you're right. It does take, unfortunately, it takes a tragedy to get to get momentum, the general population momentum. I think when it comes to this issue, we got it,
Yeah.
right? And it happened at the exact same time where we already had momentum coming from this administration. And so, maybe hopefully this gets expedited, but I think to the point that you're kind of making, it's like, let's pause here and just kind of reassess. Let's not rush into it too quickly. Let's do this right. But we have the opportunity now, and I think that's very important. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think that there's a real handle on exactly how many of these are being issued.
There is not.
What way.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I do want to kind of mention about this is a lot of times we talk about this debate about whether there's a driver shortage, and I really think a lot of this stuff comes back to that. OOIDA's position and the research backs it up that there is not a driver shortage, but one of the things, if you believe and you convince lawmakers and regulators that there is one,
they lower the barriers.
They lower the barriers, and we bring people in because we we say all the time, the nation's economy moves via truck, and so they don't want that economy to stop. And we talked about the pandemic earlier and all of the supply chain issues. So I think when they keep on being told that there's a driver shortage, it gets people real concerned that that we're going to stop the economy from moving. So they lower those barriers, and sadly, negative safety outcomes can happen from that.
Yeah, and we've asked that question before too. What I've asked that specifically, like, what is the danger of talking about a driver shortage and perpetuating that myth?
Yeah,
and this is a perfect example of what you're
and
talking about.
And it's the lowering the driver to 18. It's we need
Raising,
driverless trucks. All of these
maximum weight limits and all that.
All of this stuff that they want to do, and it's not in the name of safety.
Yes. Speaking of that kind of in a way here, let's talk about the 2009 endangerment finding now, Tyson, which I think as we talked about this a few weeks ago, we made it clear this is not a movie involving an asteroid heading for Earth. This is something out of the EPA, an emissions rule related to climate change. We've seen a lot of action on this also and a lot of conversation on this in recent months, Tyson. So much action, actually. Yeah. This is another kind of, chapter in this book as well. Just kind of walk us through what this endangerment finding is.
So, before recently, I think most people have never even heard of that, the endangerment finding, and now it's everywhere. Although none of us have ever heard it, it has been the legal foundation for some of the biggest, most strictest vehicle emission rules in the past 15 years. So going back real quick to 1999 is how far back we can go with this. So back in 1999, environmental organizations petitioned the EPA to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. So that petition was eventually denied in 2003 under the George W. Bush administration. So what the environmental organizations did is they took that petition denial to the court. That went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court directed the federal government to basically pretty much come up with a study or research, some type of finding that greenhouse gas regulations are harmful or something like that. And so it did at this time. So this is now 2007, right? So we have a new administration when it was given this directive by the Supreme Court. But anyway, so they did that study, which is now known as the 2009 endangerment finding. And again, that finding found that greenhouse gases threaten public health and welfare. That was the big takeaway. By doing that, it basically gave the federal government the green light to regulate greenhouse gases is what it did.
Yep.
Before that, they could not, and so therefore the federal government could not set these stricter vehicle emissions if it dealt directly with greenhouse gases.
So this is the first domino to fall.
It absolutely
was. Knocked all the other ones down.
So that was in 2009, and then as we know in 2010, 2011, and so on and so forth, very quickly under at least Democratic administrations, we saw the vehicle emission standards go. That was made possible by this endangerment finding. So basically, the only thing you need to know is without the endangerment finding, none of these emission rules can exist.
Right.
And so what the EPA is doing is that they are rescinding that endangerment finding, basically invalidating it, saying this does not stand up to scrutiny. We are going to scrap it. And so what that could effectively do is basically sweep the rug from underneath all of the emission rules that relied on that finding.
Yeah.
And we should note there's a comment period underway through September 22nd on this. OOIDA has weighed in, and we want to make sure we hear from OOIDA Executive Vice President Louis Pugh. He called into a hearing to weigh in last week. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
Truckers support clean air, but we need to do things that work. So we support the proposal to rescind the 2009 greenhouse gas endangerment finding and roll back nearly 20 years of overly burdensome emission regulations. These rules have put truckers out of work, hurt small business competitives, and even discouraged owner-operators from purchasing new equipment. I've owned this equipment myself and have felt some of the pains that truckers feel every day with this. Most recently, the Phase 3 heavy-duty truck rule is a blatant attempt to force consumers into purchasing electric vehicles while drivers still remain skeptical on the cost of EVs, the mileage range, the battery weight, charging times, and even the availability. We've repeatedly warned against pushing forward in more impractical emissions timelines without addressing these concerns. In 2018, I met with EPA leadership during the early stages of the Clean Trucks Plan. At that time, I was optimistic of the agency's willingness to engage with the trucking industry, which would result in more practical and achievable environmental regulations. After a few bumps in the roads, it seems like we are getting back on track of meeting those goals that will result in much more reliable and affordable vehicles, and in turn will give us achieve cleaner air for everyone. We know there's a lot more work to do, and we are on board to working with EPA to help small business truckers get the job done safely.
So again, that was Louis Pugh, Executive Vice President of OOIDA, who I guess we don't probably need to introduce at this point. We all know his voice quite well. Tyson, that EPA hearing, this again was an open comment period for people to weigh in. OOIDA was one of many. I mean, there were a lot of people that weighed in.
More than 700.
More than 700 people weighed in.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, and I caught a little bit of it. I mean, there were people on both sides of it, obviously, that are kind of talking about their support or opposition to it. In terms of trucking, though, what are we looking at here? If and when EPA does rescind this?
So as Louis pointed out, there's this thing called the Greenhouse Gas Emission Standards for Heavy-Duty Vehicles, Phase 3, just simply known as the Phase 3 rule.
Right.
What that rule does is that it requires 25% of sleeper cab tractors to be zero direct emissions by 2032. All right, that's a huge shift in what we are currently dealing with now, right? For reasons I think are pretty obvious, that will have major disruptions when it comes to diesel truck sales. It'll drive up costs, so on and so forth. I think we understand the implications here and why it's such a big deal. So that Phase 3 rule does rely on the endangerment finding to be legal.
So if it's rescinded,
so the Phase 3 goes away, right? Yeah. And so obviously, OOIDA, ATA, pretty much the entire trucking industry at large supports this because of that. And there are other rules that could be affected by the rescission of this finding, but that's the big one. And so by getting rid of that, as Louis pointed out, it would, drive down, the cost of a new truck, but it will also allow the industry to do what it has been doing for decades, which is, to address, cleaner trucks at its own pace, at a pace that is feasible, not just from, the marketability, for the consumer point, but from technologically speaking, right now the technology just does not exist to meet very strict emission standards, at least for Class 8 long haul applications. And that's very important there. Class 7 and 8, long haul, even regional applications, it's just not feasible. We saw that with advanced clean trucks in California and New York and Washington State and the other states that implemented early. But the thing is, the trucking industry, or the truck manufacturers, I should say, have been really good at, making their engines and making their trucks cleaner at a pace at which they can do it, and they have an incentive to do so, because if you think about it, the more, the better the fuel economy of a truck, the less fuel you'll burn, which we all know fuel is like the greatest overhead cost.
That's an appealing sell point right there.
Right. So if you can lower one of your largest overhead costs, the truck drivers are going to buy that truck, right? Yeah. And so they have a major incentive to do this. It's just that the reason why they haven't is because, again, the technology
they haven't
isn't
gotten there yet. Yeah.
And so, if we get rid of this Phase 3 rule, what it will possibly open the door to is for everyone to sit back at the table, the governments, stakeholders, and to try to find a more, a better, more feasible timeline to reach a reasonable goal within a reasonable timeline. And so I think that's kind of what everyone's looking forward to. Louis even kind of mentioned that towards the end of his comments, which is they really do look forward to working with, the federal government on a more feasible path forward that makes everybody happy. Because again, the trucking industry is, contrary to, popular belief by the general public, does want cleaner trucks. And if for anything, just to affect their bottom line,
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want to talk about autonomous trucks, another issue OOIDA is tracking closely. And the association sent letters to leaders of the House Energy and Commerce Committee recently. Mark, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah. First, OIDA's letter writers have been really busy this week.
Yes, yeah.
Going through a lot of pens.
Yeah. The stamps, you can't believe. But no, so basically what the association did is sent letters to the leaders of the House Energy and Commerce Committee this week, asking for them to prioritize safety regarding autonomous vehicles and cybersecurity. And these are issues that we've talked about for a long time. Right now, the reporting requirements just aren't there for autonomous vehicles. A lot of them are voluntary. There's just not enough information. But here we are, Aurora has got driverless trucks, as we speak, probably going up and down Texas highways and New Mexico now and stuff. So, all of this is being deployed. And, again, I guess kind of another theme with this OIDA is saying, hey, let's time out, let's put a pause here and make sure that everything is safe. I understand the urge to be first with technology and to be innovative and all of that. But if you survey most of Americans right now and you ask them, do you feel safe about just sharing the highway with these vehicles with nobody behind the wheel or nobody, in control of that truck, especially when we're talking about 80,000 pound trucks going down the highway, they're going to tell you, no, they don't feel safe about it. So, for all those issues, and we're getting close, and I know we'll probably talk about it a little bit more later about the highway bill coming up. And so they're kind of planting that seed to lawmakers of some of the things that we need to have regarding AVs, and then also cybersecurity concerns. Right now, we've already, you guys have reported on about hacking into the ELDs and being able to take over a truck's accelerator. I mean, just think how scary that is. I don't, I know we've talked about it for a while because it's been out there in the news, but I don't know that the large audience, the national public, has heard about that as much as they should have, and as scared as everybody should be of that idea. I mean, we talk about terrorist threats all the time. We talk about national security, and there's stuff out there that can be hacked into, whether it's connected vehicles, autonomous vehicles, ELDs, all of this sort of technology. And these are real concerns, and these are real things that need to be talked about. And again, OIDA is just getting that message out there.
Unlike the non-domiciled CDL and the emissions issues, where the momentum, I think, is in what, in the favor of OOIDA and what they would like to see, this issue seems to be going the other way because everything I see coming out of Congress is removing the barriers. Removing barriers and unleashing innovation. That's what people talk. It's like I said, I understand that motivation to be. I know they want to beat other countries to the punch of this sort of thing, but what are you beating them to? Are you beating them to being the first one to have a catastrophe out on the highway? What are you compromising? What are you compromising in rushing? Because if this is something that's better for everyone, down the road, then that's one thing. But just being first isn't always the best thing. And for that reason, too, if you're reaching out to lawmakers and fightingfortruckers.com, we always mention it as a great place to do that. But if you're having a conversation with one of your lawmakers about truck parking or bathroom access or overtime pay, any of these issues that are out there, I would recommend bringing this up too, just because I think a lot of them are not understanding the practical, matters at play here. And again, voice that there is not a driver shortage. So if you have a lawmaker that thinks we need to go forward with this because we don't have enough trucks out on the road, that's not true. Let's do speed round here. Real quick, we got a few minutes. Tyson, cross-border numbers. I hand you the baton. Run.
They're down. Hey, we're done.
All right, moving on.
But no, the latest numbers from the Bureau of Transportation Statistics came out is for the month of June, and it shows that cross-border numbers for truck and freight specifically went down in June. So that's normal, to be fair. So month to month, June's usually a slow. It's called the summer slowdown, so it's not unusual. But it is down year over year, and it's the third year over year. Decline cross-border trucking. That's mostly coming from Canada. You know, there is pretty strong action coming out of the
Mexico's been booming, or had been.
Especially computer-related freight. It's been insane. But that being said, so you look at the data from June, it's like, oh, we're back to normal because it's been pretty volatile because of the trade policy, namely in tariffs. Tariff concerns. And you look at June, it's like, oh, it's back to normal. And it kind of was, but it's kind of misleading. But the big takeaway here is that there was Uber Freight is reporting that there was a container import volume increase in June compared to May. Sounds like things are going up. Well, that's because there was a pause in the tariffs that were to start in July. So there's a lot of front loading going on.
Right.
So that kind of ticked up the numbers in June. As we now know, those tariffs are back in place.
Yep.
We don't know how that's going to affect cross-border freight for maybe a couple more months, because the thing about the tariffs is that the way that it trickles down to the consumers is kind of a slow moving. We haven't quite felt the price increases in a lot of products yet. And so once the consumers start to feel and start to realize those price increases,
we'll have a better idea of where things stand.
Yeah. And they're going to cut down on spending, and that's going to reduce freight. And so but another key takeaway is the U.S. economy has been insanely resilient when it comes to this erratic trade policy. Employment has been stable, inflation has been stable, and so that's been good news for freight so far. But again, I think a lot of companies are in a wait and see mode.
Sure.
And so that's kind of where we are right now, and so it's kind of where we have been for a while.
Yep.
But right now, freight, again, cross-border freight slightly down. How that's going to affect us in the future, we just simply do not know.
Tyson, you took the baton, but you didn't run. You briskly walked. We don't have a whole lot of time here.
Okay.
It's okay. Schremmer, the highway bill, obviously, they're still crafting it. Comments coming in.
Yeah, and basically the big takeaway on that is that the deadline to get your comments in was August 20th. It's now September 8th. Right now, truck drivers are talking about the things that you would expect, truck parking, restroom access, those sort of things. So get your comments in. September 8th is the deadline.
There it is. Schremmer
I ran.
He
Schremmer
ran. Yeah.
He sprinted.
Tyson, catch up.
And I'm a bit hefty, so it was hard. I was huffing and puffing a little
I'm
bit.
a former smoker.
We're going to run into a break here. Mark Schremmer, Tyson Fisher, Landline Magazine. We're back after this.
It comes as no surprise that fraud is a massive issue, even in the trucking industry. Truck drivers out there are no exception to that. To talk about this issue, we have Danielle Spinelli on the line. She is also referred to as the fraud girl, so we thought she would be the perfect one to bring in. Danielle, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
I want to start off just getting you to tell us a little bit about yourself, what your background is and what it is you do now.
Yeah, definitely. Prior to what I'm doing right now, I was a broker for 8 years. I worked in carrier sales, mainly specializing with copper and electrical wires. So I handled a lot of high value freight. Basically, that led me to where I'm at today. So one of the tools that I use day in, day out was my carrier portal. And so with being a user, kind of had some conversations with the My Care Portal guys over there, and then basically led me to start working for them. Then we got acquired by Descartes, so now part of the Descartes whole family, so representing My Care Portal and MacroPoint.
And I'm curious, how did you coin the nickname the Fraud Girl? Because that has a good ring to it, for sure.
And you are anti-fraud.
Yeah,
Let's make
anti-fraud.
that very clear.
Yeah, so I'm fighting fraud.
Yes.
But I actually did not come up with this myself. Somehow this started, I kept going to different conferences, and I was on different webinars or podcasts or whatever, and they kept calling me that randomly. And I'm like, this is kind of sticking. So another podcast I went on, I was telling him, I'm like, it's Nate Johnson. I was telling him that, it's so funny, everybody keeps calling me the fraud girl. And he's like, oh, that's awesome. He's like, you need to get a shirt. And then then the next conference I went to, I saw him, and that was at the Broker Carrier Summit. And he walks up to me. He's like, "Hey, I have a surprise for you." I'm like, "Okay." He hands me this hat that has the FG on it. I'm like, "FG? What does that mean?" And then he hands me the shirt, and it's like me as a superhero being Fraud Girl.
Nice.
That's awesome.
So so it's been really cool. I've been able to, I guess, kind of use that as a way to kind of get the message out there that that's specifically what I'm fighting on my end, and try to get the word out and learn as much as possible too.
Nice. We, of course, report on fraud in the industry, and there is, of course, a lot of it right now. I'm curious from your perspective, how bad are things right now? Like, would you say they're the worst they've ever been, or how are they looking from your perspective?
I definitely don't think it's the worst they've ever been. I do think there's a lot of tech out there that's made things a lot harder for people. So I do think it's gotten a little bit softer. I mean, it's still definitely there. I think the biggest threat right now is cybersecurity. There's so many carriers are getting their emails hacked, even phones hacked, and so it's really causing an issue on that front. So all the fraudsters kind of seem to have a different direction that they take as we put up the stop guards for them in one way. But I do feel like that is making a difference. And then even with like FMCSA making changes, kind of all these things, I feel like it is going to get better. I don't think it'll ever go away completely, but it does seem to be a little bit better than it was, let's say, like 2 years ago.
I mean, that's good to hear, obviously, for a number of reasons. And I think awareness is probably part of that, in that people are more aware of these fraudsters and what they're trying to do, to pull one over on people, I suppose. Can you kind of talk about the different, and there are so many out there, and I know that, and we don't necessarily want to get into a list of them necessarily, but when you look at the schemes going around right now and the way that they are targeting people, what are some of the, I guess, more common ones, and maybe some of the more serious ones that, if someone does get taken advantage of, it's really bad for them? What are you seeing out there right now?
I would say the most financially impact and serious one that we're seeing is with the cluster theft. So basically, it's usually a carrier that looks great, maybe one that you use all the time. Typically, they start running a lane for you, and they run everything perfectly. They kind of get to know the shipper and the receiver. And eventually what happens is they will start taking pallets off of there and manipulating the BOLs. So that way, at the receiver, the BOL is looking like, oh yeah, they turned in 2 pallets. Awesome, there's 2 pallets on the truck, which actually was a shortage. And so the most financial impact is that, because a lot of these receivers are not doing inventory, but maybe every 6 months to a year, and that's whenever they find out, oh well, we were actually shorted, and then that kind of flies back. So I've seen that impact like as much as like $15 million in one claim. So that's probably the heaviest hitting on that part, and that one's really hard to actually spot and stop. Really, that takes involvement from the shipper and the receiver. Really, like an EBOL would be the perfect case scenario for that.
Yeah,
that one's one that's definitely making an impact out there. But I think the most common one that's happening is just really people pretending to be a carrier by maybe even having getting into their email, with phishing attempts and things, or getting into emails and posing as that carrier, or buying MCs that look great and then holding them for 6 months to a year, and then all of a sudden going to town and taking advantage of a lot of people with these carriers that look fine. So there's so many things that are different ways out there. I could go on for hours on that, but those are probably the biggest ones that I would say.
That's a great point, though, because I think there is a tendency when something like this happens to somebody, and maybe it's the judgmental side of us as humans. We kind of look at that sometimes and think like, oh, how did they fall for that? But if you look at these schemes and you look at the way they are doing these things now, with bills of lading or whatever it may be, they look so legit. Yeah, it really is becoming more and more difficult to kind of spot these things and protect yourself. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. And even like as technology gets better, we're fighting fraud better, but also I feel like they're getting better at things too. Like even with AI, like you can get them to completely make a BOL that looks super legit, and you're not able to see the little like PDF changes that you normally would see in like a BOL manipulation, for instance. So no, totally, they're getting more sophisticated, which is making it a lot harder. And I think the biggest thing that I'm so happy this is happening is so many people are talking about their experiences, because it is happening to so many people. And that whole like, oh, it will never happen to me, or, oh, this happened to you, so you're terrible at what you do type thing. That whole mentality kind of has somewhat went away. There's
Yeah.
still some people still out there like that, but I think we've really came together as a community and been able to talk about it. And that's really how I get all my knowledge, is because people are willing to tell me, their stories of what happened to them. So,
Yeah.
You had mentioned about FMCSA, working to, help combat this. What are they doing, and what would you like to see more of?
ooh, I could go on for hours on what I could see more of from them, but well, they are making a lot of strides. So one thing that they did, I believe it was March of this year, was they made it where virtual addresses, they cannot be a new registered motor carrier with a virtual address. That's always actually been in the law where they can't have that, but they've actually finally enforced it. So that's one thing. They actually have been shutting down, I don't remember the exact numbers, but like a huge chunk of people that were trying to do it that way. So at least an actual address that they're using. Now, how legit it is, I don't know. But what they're doing with new registers is whenever they are registering, they're having to do the IDEMIA, which is almost like whenever you go to like TSA and they're taking a picture of your face, they're grabbing that with your picture of your driver's license, and they're able to really tell like if it's a live photo, if it's if it's like a fake driver's license. They have all that stuff in there and like make sure it's like a real face and not just somebody pretending to. So definitely like the most advanced tech on that, which is very like surprised that FMCSA invested all of this, but they're really protecting that registration process. Now, their second phase 2 step is where they're going to go through all existing carriers and brokers and kind of have them do the same type of identity verification. But honestly, now with them doing that change, it's making it where like, prior to all of this, if you are a brand new carrier, as a broker, I'm like hands up, like I'm not talking to you until you've been in business for a while. But now it's like actually those are the most safest ones because they've had all their IDs checked.
Yeah.
So they're making some stride, but yeah, definitely a long ways to go. It's a lot more than just registration that they need to help with. So.
Well, yeah, and you said you could talk for hours about what you would like to see FMCSA do, and to their credit, or I guess to kind of speak in defense of them a little bit, I think they're in kind of a difficult position with a lot of this because they're focused on safety. Obviously, this is a safety issue because you've got people who are being taken advantage of in various ways. But
Right.
what does that look like? I guess if you were to paint that perfect picture of FMCSA cracking down on all the fraud out there, what would that look like if you were advising them, I guess?
I think really the biggest thing is the existing market that's out there, and then like if we spot that there's fraudulent activity, being able to make that process quicker where they can investigate it and then get MC shut down. I think that's like having swifter action to that. Now, it's hard because some people will get mad as a carrier and then just, submit it in the claim or something, so they do have to vet it. But I think that's one thing is shutting down those guys. And then also having a way for, like, the selling of MCs. That's kind of the biggest thing that I see with them, that they need to figure out a way where if an MC is sold, there's a way to look into it. They're verifying, like, the business license and confirming that this is the actual person, registering or having the business still open, or things are done legally correctly, because it is where they only can be on a legal standpoint, right? Like they can only say their legal paperwork is right. So there's only so much that they can do. It's not they cannot be the reason. They're not going to be the reason to stop fraud. That's for sure. But they can definitely put more roadblocks up at the beginning processes and as existing as they're buying MCs that currently they don't have all the way together.
Yeah.
Who, when we talk about these criminals, they kind of just seem like faceless beings.
Well, they are going to be when AI takes over humanity.
Right.
Yeah.
Who are these people that are doing all this?
So it's interesting. I actually had a pretty decent friends with the California Highway Patrol, the Cargo Theft Task Force. It's 4 guys that handle all of Southern California, which is like cargo theft mega of the U.S. So. Great guys, but they were telling me how a lot of times it is the same people over and over again. Like I know they had a Armenian gang that they arrested in LA not that long ago, and they found them doing so much cargo theft on that front, but then also, sex trafficking and all sorts of different, other crimes that they conducted. But what they're seeing on the CHP side is whenever they are arresting somebody, like here's a story I'll share. Whenever they were telling me this, they raided a warehouse that was basically from the ceiling to the floor all the way back, completely full of stolen freight, over $13 million worth of stolen freight.
Wow.
They got convicted. They got 8 years. But then after 1 year, they got out for good behavior, and this was in California. So they got out in 1 year for bad behavior. Shortly after, basically started doing the same thing again. And for them, the way that they even really noticed is they were, got a report on a cargo theft. They looked into it and they're like, this seems very familiar to how so and so used to do it. And then looked it up, and oh yeah, this guy just got out 6 months ago. It's probably him again.
Wow.
That, and they're seeing it's a lot of they may deport somebody and then they just come right back in. So. It's a lot of the same people doing it. Oh, super! Like for them, they're like, this is the most frustrating part of it. But all we can do is just keep doing this and hoping that legislation changes. So it is a lot of the same people, and then that's just within the U.S. But there's a lot of things happening overseas that we need to take more control over somehow. That's on like the cybersecurity side of things, and they're doing things remotely.
I was kind of joking there about AI. I know you mentioned it earlier too, and how AI is kind of changing the game a little bit here. In all seriousness, no, this got to be a concern for you as you see the way AI is exponentially just getting faster and better on so many levels. That means that criminals also are going to be able to figure out ways to use it against folks as well. Does AI just scare the daylights out of you in these terms?
Yeah, it definitely does. I do think AI is going to help in a lot of ways, but kind of same thing where AI to AI will be, talking to each other, and then how are you actually vetting? How do we know that the carrier AI feature, is actually vetting their customers? So yeah, I think that's probably the next big wave. I've been trying to learn as much as I can about AI just so that I can, try to predict what could happen, but. Yeah. These fraudsters are coming out with new things that I would have been like, God, I would have never even thought about that,
Yeah.
So I'm sure they'll come up with some new ways to make AI be, a bad thing. But no, it's definitely going to be a new realm of things. And because tech takes so long to catch up especially the logistics world, I think that's going to be a hard hit for a long time when this starts happening.
Can we talk about the economic impact of all this? I mean, I assume companies aren't just footing the bill when these things happen. Are these, is this cost getting passed down to the consumer?
Yeah, I actually saw a report, and I feel like don't 100% quote me because I can't remember where I got this from, but I saw somewhere where actually 20% of our goods, especially on high value goods, is being added because of cargo theft and retail theft. So, they are definitely passing this on. They're not going to just, eat everything. And honestly, with the shippers, out there, they're a lot of times not paying for anything. It's going straight on like a broker, and a lot of the shippers that do have the high value freight, they only will use brokers in these cases. That way they kind of get some liability off of them and then want them to pay for things. So yeah, it's definitely coming back on the consumer in a lot of ways. I mean, as we know, we see everything going up in rates. Even like the egg theft that happened not that long ago, and then we see eggs on the shelf for $7 a carton. So it's definitely coming into play on so many different levels. And I think that's why even educating people who are not in logistics is so crucial, because maybe it's where somebody in a different field, like even let's say like the banking industry, they had to put a hold on fraud on their end. Maybe they can help the logistics industry on how do we fix things. Kind of once they see, oh, this is impacting me, not just because I'm, and I'm not even in logistics. So, I think that's where education and spotlight and all that stuff that we can do in the logistics industry and getting that out there is going to be key.
That has gotten better though, right, in recent years. And we kind of talked about this a little bit, but the communication and the collaboration and the understanding that everything is connected and that this is a community above all things else, that has made a difference, I think, right, in recent years. That is encouraging.
Yeah, definitely. I do see a lot of things get like for the positive, not just to kind of talk all negative.
Yeah,
but yeah,
for sure.
it's definitely where so many people are sharing stories now. A lot of tech is integrating together. That did not happen like 5 years ago. Like techs were not talking to each other. Like even with my care portal, we're about to integrate with Carrier Sure, which is another vetting platform. Some would consider that like a competitor, but really it's like, hey, if you have both, let's just make things double strong because they check different things than we check. So it's stuff like that, like tech working together, customers talking to each other, different conferences having, fraud experts on panels and talking about real instances just to learn like, hey, this happened, or maybe they have a story in the crowd where things were a little bit different than how they got attacked, and that's stuff we can learn from. So we are making progress.
100%. Yeah.
You mentioned, people sharing stories, especially if they've fallen victim to it. I assume, most people wouldn't want to, be so forthcoming with, them falling to this. But how important is it to hear from these people who have experienced this?
Yeah, it's crucial, especially for like being a tech and developing, fraud, a fraud platform, preventing platform. It's huge. Like really, every time something happens, and I'm glad I have a network online and known as quote unquote the fraud girl, because I do have so many people message me like on LinkedIn, and they're like, hey, this just hit me. My company got hit. Let me tell you the whole story. We break down the whole story. I find little bits and pieces. Oh, I wonder if we built this in there, would that have prevented it, or would it have given you a bigger red flag so you would have asked more questions and things like that. So that happens all the time. And then having somebody, like people reaching out to me, they know I'm not actually saying that company's name on what happened. It's kind of more of a generic thing. So that's definitely a way where if you're scared to have your information out there, there are people you can reach out to that will keep you anonymous but still get the word out.
Can we talk about staying safe and staying out of this mess a little bit too? Because as individual truck drivers are extremely busy. They've got a million things on their mind. When you start looking at all of this, it is overwhelming to think about, this person can take advantage of me in this way, or, am I doing this right, or am I doing this wrong? It really does get overwhelming. Do you have advice for just the individual listening to this right now about ways in which they can, be smart, stay safe, keep these fraudsters at bay and away from their business and their livelihood? What does that look like, I suppose, for each person out there?
Especially as a carrier, I mean, really they're on the ground and they see a lot. So to me, the blind shipments, if you get a blind shipment, that's probably like the number one way that they're hitting with double brokering schemes. If you get approached with a blind shipment, that needs to be vetted further. Don't just take that for face value. So things like that. If you're getting told to deliver to a random parking lot and like a U-Haul backs up to you and they're offloading it to a U-Haul, I mean, that's kind of like a red flag. But you'd be surprised at how many kind of obvious, to the, everyone else, the obvious, hey, something's off here. And even the carrier a lot of times will say, yeah, it felt off, like something was weird about it. I didn't know what to do or what to ask or what, who do I talk to about confirming this? So I think really trusting your gut on things, if it's not like an everyday type of load, really asking questions and kind of drilling in on things is huge. And then really at the end of the day, like having a conversation. I know so many people want to have virtual, emails back and forth for booking loads or, just keeping everything as virtual as possible and not having human interaction. But pick up the phone, call like the FMCSA phone number, confirm that they received a rate sheet or confirm that, you're the driver on the load. That little tiny extra step can go a long ways.
That's great advice.
Yeah, that is really good advice.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Danielle, if you were given one wish that you could change something that would just completely, help this whole problem.
It's the rare genie in the bottle with only one wish.
Would it be? Yeah, not three.
Not
you only
three,
have one.
Just one.
Oh, man, just one. I would say I wish that shippers, warehouse dock workers would go out to every truck and verify the carrier and make sure that it matches whatever information like the broker or whoever's on the load has. I think that would eliminate so much of this, but unfortunately that does not happen. So.
Well, and it's tough too. I mean, with rates being what they are and, people just trying to make a living.
Can't get too picky, yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of rush into it and, hey, here's a load. I can go get it right now. And then, it doesn't take much for it to go sideways, which is a frustrating thing about all this, and unfortunately there are people out there who who are prone to take advantage and want to take advantage of people.
Yeah.
It's sad.
That's crazy too, because a lot of those guys that do take advantage. I mean, think about if they were to actually have a legitimate, business, they would kill it. I mean, they know all the ins and outs of things. They would do such a great job, but it's really very low investment for a high, return on things. So, and especially if they're outside of the U.S., I mean, they literally have zero chance of getting anything thrown back on them or having any type of criminal time.
Yeah.
So it's a very low risk, high reward business for them. So
yeah, absolutely.
That is scary. Well, Danielle, we appreciate the work you're doing, and we appreciate your time and speaking with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. Like I said, the more we can talk about this, the better. So get it out there and talk to all the people. If you guys have any advice on, or like if any of your listeners have any advice on things that they're doing to stop things, definitely hit me up. So like I said, I'm trying to learn from everybody. That way we can spread the word. So.
Yeah, and that's a great thing. And you mentioned earlier, but where can people find you? Where can they go for more information?
So to find me specifically, I'm on LinkedIn, Danielle Spinelli, or you can also go to mycareportal.com. That's a great, resource. We have lots of webinars and things like that on there that, those California Highway Patrol guys, for instance, we did a webinar with them, very informative. FMCSA, we did a big one with them on their new registration process. So it's mycareportal.com is a great resource to really learn a lot if you're, just trying to dive in and educate yourself.
Awesome.
Excellent.
All
Danielle,
right.
thank you so much.
Thank
Really do
you.
appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Penske is the trusted source for quality used trucks. Whether you search our website, call our sales staff, or bid at our online auction, you are sure to find the right used truck for your business. Visit PenskeUsedTrucks.com to view our inventory and learn more.
High heat and low lubricity can break your diesel fuel down fast. Summer driving means crowded roads, more stress, dust, and a bigger risk of costly engine damage. Howe's Diesel Defender protects from the inside out, cleaning, lubricating, and fighting injector wear. Visit HowsProducts.com.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
And we're back. Great talk there, Ashley, with Danielle Spinelli, the fraud girl. A lot of insights
good
there.
tips.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Of course, we talked with Mark Schremmer and Tyson Fisher earlier in the show.
Those guys are always so great to talk to.
Yeah, they are on top of everything.
They are, yeah.
We knew about Tyson's disc dog.
Yeah, I knew he
Mina.
had some talent with his dog. I didn't know all the details, but yeah, that is fascinating.
I remember I started right at the start of the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
in March of 2020, and I remember that being a focal point of the Zoom. We have a morning meeting, and so all the Mina would make an appearance, and he would talk about over the weekend they won this competition or entered this competition. It was really fun. Our dogs are not.
I don't think we're winning any competitions, judging by what I've heard from you about your dog.
She could win a cute competition. She's very cute and very
that's good.
sweet, but she is too stubborn to catch a
any
disc
sort of,
or do anything that I ask her to do. And Lucy, your pup is.
She's not. No, she's napping. She's snuggling. She's a good snuggler.
Yeah,
but
see,
no,
my
I
dog
don't
doesn't
think,
even snuggle. That's the thing.
She'll sometimes play fetch with the toys, but no.
Fetch in terms of like actually bringing it back?
No.
Okay, that's not fetch. That's just going to get the thing that you threw.
She'll get it, but no, she's good with the kids. Like a nice tug of war.
Yeah,
that's always fun to watch.
Yeah,
but
well,
she's not.
On National Dog Day, they come in all different sizes and abilities, and
we still love them, even if they're not
levels.
bringing us award-winning.
Yeah, if you want to share, we love we're dog fans.
Yes,
so if
love
you want to
dogs.
send a
Absolutely.
picture of your dog or something, you can
We would
email
love
us
to see it.
podcast@ooida.com. National Dog Day.
Yeah. I always love seeing trucking dogs too. Like those are, I think that's the coolest thing.
Yes. You know what we need to
having your
do is
buddy.
Louis Pugh. Have we talked about Bandit on the show before?
I don't know, but if we haven't, we need to.
That is the dog.
That is the dog. That is the most loyal dog. He brings that dog into the office
So well
and
trained.
just no leash, but like right by his side.
Yeah. Shout out to Bandit out there here on
We love you,
National
Bandit.
Dog Day. Shout out to all the dogs out there as well. And shout out to our truckers, obviously. And thank you for all you do to keep America moving. We appreciate it and appreciate you listening today to Trucking with OOIDA. We're back with another show this week.
Today's episode of Trucking with OOIDA was brought to you by a dedicated team of people that includes Jim Fetzer, Keegan White, Tennille Flick, and Kim Boren.
Got thoughts? We'd love to hear them. Call us at 1-800-324-6856 and leave us a message. Or you can send us an email to podcast@ooida.com and we might include it on the show.